That's 19. So I think he has like
They're using,
six,
they're using Jessica's milk.
seven,
Highway, right? So-
seven, 760 something.
Is that twice a month or is that?
Is what a private nonprofit sort of thing, or is it a government agency? No, they get all kinds of funding. I'm just curious. I mean, that's a change. They get 70% of their funding. Yes. One of the NGO types. I always get a little suspicious of the public-private. Not that they think bad, it's just that it kind of blurs the line.
Staying pretty good. Yeah. Yeah.
I got a bunch of my.
Deadline. You like this? Last day.
The windows.
I would lay there. He's giving me the best. You need to be present.
Who's the solver for problems in the world?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like my list.
Staring at the interior, guys, bringing internet down the highway finally, and hoping they get to my yard soon. Waiting for that. Be a big deal.
Only 5.
Boys last week. I got there yesterday.
Yeah, I spoke to one of the guys the other day with that drain tile. I'm like, please don't hit it. It's a wet lot. I need that water to run away from the house. And if you're running it by the power, you're gonna be running it by the stream.
Jim, our superintendent, Stanley, watched him bury the line.
Good idea, fix it.
Was a Century guy. Says, when am I gonna get out of the high speed? As you got it, they won't let me hook up. They say it isn't good. He followed.
Well, it is now 6 p.m. I'd like to call the May 14th meeting of the County Board to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the roll shows we have 20 supervisors present, one absent. We're on item 4, approval of the agenda.
Supervisor Bumar move.
Later a second.
Wilmar moves. Slater second.
Watt seconds.
We have a second already, thank you. Slater has seconded it.
Okay.
Any discussion at all on the approval of the agenda? If not, then we'll vote to approve the agenda. Have a couple not registering.
To approve the agenda.
Okay. The agenda is approved. Item 5, members of the public to be heard. There are none registered. So item 6, move on the consent agenda. For a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So Supervisor Bergeron moves to approve.
Bergeron moves to approve.
Supervisor Goodman, second.
Supervisor Goodman is a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? No discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote to approve the consent agenda. Okay. Consent agenda is approved. Item 7, reports. A, general reports. Item 1, the Chippewa Valley Regional Airport update by Chair Zeke. Welcome.
I'm actually not even going to go through what was in the packet, but I will note that there's a printed copy on your desk, and it was a nice piece that an aviation publication company did on the airport, and so I thought it was worth sharing. It's a good summary. So as Supervisor Hull mentioned, I'm Charity Zeke. I'm the airport director at the Chippewa Valley Regional Airport. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come out tonight and kind of give you an overview of the airport and talk about what we do, what our relationship with the county is, and I'll try to be brief in giving you that. So just kind of an overview of our operational structure. So the airport's actually owned by Eau Claire County. It's in the city of Eau Claire, and it's owned by Eau Claire County in the city of Eau Claire in Chippewa County. So we have this sort of three municipality relationship, but it's actually operated under an agreement between Chippewa and Eau Claire counties, a 5-year operating agreement that's been going on since the late 90s, I believe. So for quite a while, and in my opinion, it's been a very successful way to operate the airport. We have, through that agreement, created an airport commission, which is a 7-member board comprised of both county board supervisors and citizen members. And the airport commission it's a unique structure for operation of airports in Wisconsin. Many are operated directly by a municipality, either a city or a county. I believe what is special or good about the airport commission operation is it allows us to be more nimble maybe than other airports in pursuing funds that are available and or business opportunities that are available by working directly with the airport commission versus having to go to one county or city or multiple counties. So thank you for those of you who have supported that in the past, and hopefully we'll continue to support that. So just kind of some of the service lines at the airport, or the business relationships that we have at the airport. First, I wanted to talk about air service because it's the number one thing people think about with regard to the airport. So we have kind of a storied history of air service in our region, but I'm not going to go all the way back to the beginning. I'll just start with in March of 2010, our air service in our community or our region became supported by the US DOT through a program called Essential Air Service. The Essential Air Service program was created during airline deregulation to ensure communities that had air service prior to deregulation continued to receive it post-deregulation. I mention that because it'll be important later on, I guess. The program is excellent in the sense that it ensures that we continue to have airline service, but it is somewhat limiting in what it allows us to do with air service. So we started with United Express service in March of 2010, and that ran through November of 2022. The service with United was enjoyed increases in numbers year over year, every year, except for a few years during COVID, of course. And we were excited to hopefully have that continue until we got sort of to the post-COVID timeframe and airline travel started to rebound, and airlines figured out that there was a national shortage of pilots, most disproportionately affecting the regional carriers, which was the carrier that was providing the United Express service for us. So they terminated service to our community and 28 other communities at the same time due to that national pilot shortage. So that led to the DOT issuing an RFP for service to our community again. And there were a couple bidders, but the Airport Commission ultimately supported to the DOT the Sun Country Airlines bid that was received. Sun Country Airlines is not a traditional essential air service provider. They are providing less than daily service and serving a little bit of a different market than the United Express carrier was. We weren't sure how that was going to go, but I think on behalf of the Airport Commission, I can say we felt that it would definitely be more successful than 6 or 7 seat turboprop to Chicago, or something that people would probably only fly one time and realize it was not something they wanted to do all over again. So we made that transition, and despite serving, sort of a different clientele than we were previously, the region has responded very well to the service. In last year, we served almost I'm losing my numbers here. We exceeded 50,000 passengers for the first time since 2004. So in almost 20 years, we had the highest numbers, which was pretty exciting. Sun Country offers 3 rotating nonstop seasonal destinations, and then also flights with connecting opportunities to their hub in Minneapolis. And then finally, they have a partnership with a ground transportation provider called Landline, which is seamless travel. You can book right through the Sun Country website as part of your connecting ticket once you for flying out of Minneapolis. So the Sun Country contract runs through November of this year. We expect the DOT to issue a request for proposals sometime soon in the next few weeks. And then we'll see, what proposals come in, and obviously the Airport Commission will, have to carefully weigh the options that are available and try to make a decision that can best serve the, maximum number of people in our community. So I mentioned limitations of the EAS program, and maybe you have heard this, maybe people have just said it to you anecdotally. The Essential Air Service program only allows service to 2 hubs at any time. So a thing we hear frequently is, why don't you also serve Phoenix in the winter? That would be amazing, but the Essential Air Service program doesn't allow for that, unfortunately. And so there are some limitations in that fashion, but so more to come on that, I guess. The other segment of our aviation population that's really important is the general and corporate aviation segment. We have almost 100 aircraft based at the airport. That's anything from a single engine home built that maybe somebody built in their hangar, all the way up to a 35-seat jet based at the airport. And so a wide variety of users, from Civil Air Patrol to DNR to State Patrol. Obviously we have a pretty large local home improvement retailer who's also based at the airport, and so we do have quite a wide variety of users from general aviation. The airport owns over 60 hangars, and then there's another couple dozen privately owned hangars that we're storing those aircraft in. And then sort of the third part of our business at the airport is what we call our partners, our airport partners, which would be the car rentals and Hangar 54 Grill, which is a full-service restaurant and bar that's located in the terminal. If you haven't been there, I would encourage it. It's wonderful. So please try that out. I wanted to update you on some projects that we've been working on. Specifically because the funding that we get from Chippewa County through that operating agreement specifically is for capital improvements. So we use all the funds that we get from Chippewa County towards capital projects. So we recently completed construction on a new 25,000 square foot corporate hangar, which for the first time ever allows us to store all large cabin business jet aircraft, which is pretty exciting in our world, maybe not in yours, but in ours. We are underway with a project to The second and final phase of a project to replace our perimeter fence at the airport. We are going to start construction soon on another 7,700 square foot hangar, and we expect delivery within another month of a new fire truck for the airport. So funding, obviously some of our capital comes from Chippewa County. A majority of our federal funding comes from the Airport Improvement Program through the Federal Aviation Administration. That program is primarily funded through aviation user fees. So it's not general tax dollars, it's fuel taxes, ticket taxes, taxes of users of the aviation system that are collected to be reinvested in improvements at airports. So we aggressively pursue as many of those dollars as we possibly can because there's a 90% federal share on those projects, and then the state splits that remaining 10% with us. So, and then I think the last thing I'll just mention is every few years we host a pretty big air show at the airport. If you haven't been, it's pretty fun. And we have another one coming up in June 28th and 29th, 2025. So you get the opportunity to come out for that. And if it's okay, I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Sure. Anybody have any questions for Charity?
How much is the government subsidizing Sun Country?
I don't have the number off the top of my head. I could get back to you on that.
Okay.
Do you eventually see getting back to what you formerly had?
With the daily scheduled service. So we do know, obviously we don't know who will bid on our market. What we do know is that the carrier that we had, the United regional carrier that we had previously is rebidding markets that they left at the same time they left ours. So I think it's a reasonable expectation that they'll rebid the market. Interestingly, as I mentioned with passenger traffic, I think it's going to be a difficult decision because we're serving more passengers than we did the entire time with the previous service, but that was daily scheduled service to a major hub. So it's, I think it's going to be a challenging decision to sort of weigh out the pros and cons of all of the options.
I'm wondering if you have any ideas on grants that you had mentioned before that, makes you able to be quite nimble in those applications. Do you have your eye on a few things right now in the horizon at all?
Yeah, we maintain a 5-year capital improvement plan. So we're working, we're constantly, we have a large facility and, almost 1,000 acres. And so there's a lot of, we have several miles of pavement on the airport that is substantially more expensive to maintain than highways, unfortunately. Because it's, thicker, more robust than for aircraft than for vehicles. And so we're always looking at, new opportunities for how we can improve our facilities. For example, another project that we have in the pipeline right now is a lighting replacement project for our airfield. So we've started replacing with some LED lighting, but we haven't done our entire airfield yet. So that project would be probably multiple phases that would finish off replacing all of our airfield lighting with LED.
How many full-time employees of those, how many are air traffic controllers?
So over 100 people work at the airport. 7 of those work for the airport itself. So a majority of the people who work at the airport are employed by, private businesses or the FAA or the TSA, some other entity. Of the air traffic, there are 5 air traffic controllers who work for a private contractor that is under contract with the FAA for operation of the airport, of the air traffic control tower, excuse me.
Okay, any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charity. So we'll move on to item B, the county administrator reviews updates. Number one, options for the courthouse security.
Thank you, Chair.
You're in.
Good evening. My name is Randy Schultz. I'm the county administrator. So tonight, we're just going to look at what the recommendations came through from the previous board, answer any questions you may have, see if you need any more information, but no decision has to be made tonight. This is a big decision, and we're going to bring that forward next month, pending if we can answer all your questions or if we have to bring more information forward. So I really wanted to start out with some background. So the first security assessment was conducted in 2012, 2013, and the county board adopted the government campus integration security plan. At that point, the county board made a conscious decision not to go to a single point of entry. And the reason I'm pointing that out is that's kind of what we were looking at with this second round of looking at the security and something we were focusing on. But they did hash that over. They decided not to do that and move forward with the current plan that we're doing. So we had a Supreme Court marshal come and look at, try to determine the best entrance for a single point, because that's really the direction I received. She did a half-day evaluation, really didn't have the ability to give it the full focus I'm sure she would want it to give, and obviously missed some things that we're currently doing. So, but before we get on to the single point of entry, I really wanted to talk about some of the things that we've done, that Chippewa County's done to implement more security in the building. So implemented ID badges, seems pretty simple, but something that wasn't done before. Installed security cameras. Obviously, that was a huge project. If you walk throughout the building, you can see all the security cameras. We use that a lot for security. Expand our duress alarm pull cords. Many of our employees have those at their desk or obviously very close to them in case there's an incident. And if you push one of those, they will come. They do not mess around. They come across the cul-de-sac very quickly and mean business. So they do a great job of responding. Implementing the government center elevated security procedure, and then mutual respect and protection policy, which basically gives us the ability, if there's a run-in with a citizen, with one of our employees, we utilize that, and then that gets filled out, comes to me, I send it over to the sheriff, our chief deputy, and they analyze that, come back with recommendations, and then that's how we move forward with some of the people we have to deal with day in, day out. Obviously, there's lots of stuff that happens in this courthouse that people aren't happy about. Sometimes the employees directed, if you have a meeting, contact the sheriff department or Mark and set up that arrangement ahead of time. If it's so bad that this person we feel is an imminent threat, if you see this person, pull your cord right away, and we'll deal with it that way. So it really depends on each situation, and the sheriff office does a great job of working with us to make sure our employees are safe. Which is a big deal, obviously. The majority of our apartments have been remodeled, and that's really where the security plan from 2012, 2013, where they focused on, is looking at individual departments and seeing how to make them secure. And there's differences in each department depending on kind of the department and the analysis of what security needed to be done in that area. But we didn't just keep it to the courthouse. We looked at the highway department, and they've implemented some additional security, firearm range we had towers, we have cameras, and all that's towards security. So the list isn't inclusive, but it really shows that the county board has spent millions of dollars to remodel this place in order to make it more secure. Obviously, there's more work to be done, and then obviously that all changes if you decide to go to a single point of entry. We're going to pivot and concentrate on that, obviously. So after review, Larry Richinger's our facility and parks director, and Wold Architects. They have done a lot of our security for us. The option and requirements needed, we determined there is really only one viable option for a single point of entry. I don't know if you got that map. Would you be able to call that up real quick, Tracy? So this is in your packet too. Really, if you're familiar with the register of deeds, right where she's got her cursor, that's really the only entrance that's going to work for what needs to be done for a single point of entry. It needs to be pretty wide. You have to have ingress, egress. Got to be handicap accessible. Have to have a location for the single point of entry for the officers doing that. So that's really the only area that would work. I really would have liked it on that north entrance because of the big parking lot. Obviously, it's not real good on that west, is that west or west entrance because of parking's tough, right? So that's going to be some of the challenges if we decide to do that. But that's really the only thing that worked. And we came up with a budget between $500,000 and $1 million. And the reason for that, the big disparity or the big spread in that is it would depend on what the county board decided to do with employees. So there's technology out there that we can put in each entrance that will allow employees to come in and won't allow anybody to come in behind them, piggybacking they call it. But those options are very expensive. So that's why there's such a big range on that. So after looking at this for months, we really came up with 3 options. So the first one is move towards implementing a single point of entry. This means public would enter and exit through one door. We would need to hire 2 additional courthouse security officers to manage the entrance. Parking would be a challenge with this option. County board would need to decide a number of policy items, and I just listed a few. Will everybody, including staff, be required to only enter and exit that building? And I obviously reached out, nothing's new, so we'll reach out to other counties, see what they've done. Talked to all the ones I could really talk to, and it varies. Some have a single point of entry where everybody goes through, or at least that's how they started. Then they get a lot of pushback, and then it's really tough for facilities and parks to go in and out of that same building when they're that same entrance when they're trying to shovel the sidewalk on the opposite side of the building. Employees don't like it after a time. The one I'm very familiar with is Marathon County because I used to live in Lincoln County, and they had a big incident in Marathon County that wasn't at the courthouse, but it involved some lawyers and a couple officers. Some people, unfortunately, were shot and killed. So they went single point, locked everything down. And I talked to their administrator maybe 6 months ago now, and they just moved back on that where the employees can go in any door, but they still have to go through the point of entry. So the discussions we've had is locking down most security you can do, right? Most inconvenient to everybody, and everybody says security isn't convenient. Once you back off that, then you're complicating the security and compromising the security. So there's lots of policy decisions that would have to be made throughout that process, depending on if you would decide to go with that option. Option 2 is really continuing implementing the current government integrated security plan. We have a few more departments that need to be looked at. One that really hasn't talked about too much over the years is our DOA, where my office is. It really has no security at all. We just had a training for situation awareness, and I was surprised in the training when they said HR and administration are the ones that are targeted the most in counties typically. So I was like, well, that's not good. So that's something we definitely have to look at. Again, depending on which direction you guys choose. And then the third option that we've talked about is hire 1 or 2 additional security officers. We did put money into the budget to be able to do that, to give the county board some flexibility. And what we're looking at tonight is to add 1 security officer. And obviously we'll talk more about that when that comes up. So we'll need a decision to the county board before staff's able to come forward with any kind of recommendation. And we'll do that. So we have a team together that does security, and it would come through there. And then depending on what those recommendations would depend on what committee it kind of flows through. So it could go through facility and parks, which most likely it would because it's dealing with facilities. Obviously it would come through exec because you're doing budget and personnel policies, dealing with that. And then it would come to the full board, and then you would vote on that depending on what you decide as a recommendation. So we brought this through the previous board just because they had to deal with this from the beginning, knew we were going to have a new board coming in and there was a lot of new members. So the executive committee met on March 5th, 2024 and came up with a hybrid option. Essentially what they recommended is to close some of our doors. And one of the ones we're talking about doing is the east door, way to the right. That's our handicap accessible door. So we couldn't close the door, but as you can see, there's stairs right there. So close that off because it would, people could go in there and go immediately upstairs and you wouldn't be able to see them. If you approve this position tonight, we'd move forward with filling it. And then one of the offices that we're looking at utilizing for this position is right there where Tracy has her cursor. This would allow by closing that off, and then there's another entrance to the south where HR is. We've talked about closing that off. There's other entrances that people can use for that. It's not too inconvenient. Because what that would allow then, no matter where somebody comes into the location, that if there's somebody at that station or in that area, they'd be able to see people coming in and out. That office would be set up exactly like the current office is, with monitors, cameras, ability to see. Obviously, we'll talk about it some more too, the reasons to have a second security officer, but that's what was recommended by executive committee. That came to the county board. County board agreed with that recommendation to give to the new board. So that's what they landed on. So the plan moving forward is to see again if you have any questions, anything we can answer, and then I would bring back basically this document to the executive committee for their final recommendation to the board, and then the board would make a recommendation or make a decision at that point. And the decision would be either to follow one of these models, come up with your own, and then we'd have to work that through that work group and then bring that back to the county board. So that's kind of the history and how we kind of got here today. Maybe I should back up a little bit. We did have an incident. I can't remember the date. Was that May? I believe that was in May. That really kind of brought this to the forefront. We had an individual on Facebook threatening our employees, the judges, and we ended up closing. They ended up closing Highway 52 and got barricaded themselves. So it was the real deal. And our law enforcement did a great job preventing that. But so that really kind of re-energized this discussion, even though we've been, moving down that path, obviously, a lot over these years. But, it's a concern everywhere. Just give you a little personal story. I've been up in Florence County quite a bit, very small county. I don't know, 30, maybe 6,000 people, maybe. I don't even know if it's that big. And they have a courthouse, one building. They have two entrances, and I've been going in there talking to their zoning department for a while. And all of a sudden I walked up to the door, employees only. I'm like, that's interesting, because we're talking about the same thing, right? So I go walk 15 feet and go in the other door. Nobody's monitoring it. Nobody's around. So I talked to their employee and said, is this for security, or, what's your reason? And I kind of told her what I did and said, we're looking at the same thing. She said, yeah. I said, but you're not monitoring it? No. So it's not really doing anything, right? But everybody, I think, feels like they got to do something for the security, and that's what they landed on. So some counties have, in Eau Claire County, they have their second floor shut down. It's secure. That's where I believe the courts are. I don't know if DHS is up there, but so we've talked about that. The judges really have been adamant about this. This needs to be a solution for the whole courthouse, not just the second floor, not just for the courtroom. So they've been of that, even though obviously they were the target of the threat. So they've been good about that. Any questions or anything I can clarify?
I have one.
I don't know how to recognize an order.
Supervisor Kelly.
Okay. Supervisor Kelly, please, anybody that'd like to question, please indicate on your,
Supervisor Kelly,
if you'd like to speak.
would, I guess, because I received the email, and I'm sure everybody else did, from Sheriff Hicks, is that another option?
Yeah, so let me address that. Yeah, so me and Sheriff talked after he sent that out. He sent that out to the previous board. He thought that you guys were making a decision tonight, and he wasn't involved in that decision. That's not the case. He's on that committee that's going to do that and do all that. So we talked, and he thought what was on this agenda item, you guys are making the final decision tonight. So that's why he sent that out. Obviously, everything that he provides and talks to is going to be kind of talked through in that committee, and then the recommendations will come out of there. So, yeah, that's right. Right now, there's lots of stuff in that. I mean, I saw it the previous time he put it out, and you can't close off everything. There's life safety stuff. There's stuff we have to talk to architects about and all that stuff. But that he will definitely have the opportunity to engage in that process.
Well, no, just because, I mean, there's bits and pieces in that, plus, option 3. There's other items in there.
Yep,
All right, I was just curious.
yep. Good question.
Supervisor Hennig?
Supervisor Henning, District 15. Half the question was answered already that I had. The other part is, will these closed-off doors be able to be evacuated from the inside out in case of fire?
Yeah, they have to be, yep.
Okay.
Yep, we got to follow all fire codes and life safety issues, yep.
And last question, what do you personally feel?
That's a great question. As many people know, I'm pretty opinionated. But this one's tough for me. You know, I'm a criminal justice major, so I'm very black and white. And if you're going to secure something, secure it. But I know operational wise, that's very difficult to do. And I know the history from other counties that did that and then backed off it just because operational is very difficult. It's a huge policy decision you guys are going to have to make. So I don't know. I think we need to do some level of security. I think the hybrid, I'd never even thought of it. Obviously, those three were my recommendation, and I thought the executive committee and county board came up with a good kind of compromise between those two. So I was comfortable with what they came up with.
One last thing, you are going to take time to look at everyone's viewpoint new now? You know, some of the things that Sheriff entered and other concerns and readdress it?
Yeah, so if anybody has anything outside this meeting, please come and talk to us about it so we can definitely address that. Yep, that work group is really is going to do the heavy lifting, and that's the sheriff's office, the security department heads will bring it to them. We'll talk to them. Yeah, we'll make sure everybody has their opportunity to communicate on the security, and we hear the range from our employees too. They want something very secure to it's good. I feel safe. You know, so. It's a tough issue, I mean, for sure, and that's why a lot of counties are struggling with it.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Guzman?
Could you clarify for me on the hybrid option number 4? Does that also address the integrated security plan where you mentioned that currently you're not necessarily safe either? So would the hybrid also include, I think it was like number 2, where that was identified?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we would continue with that if we're doing a hybrid, because you're not. The only way I don't think we would continue with it is if we did a complete lockdown and everybody was secure. Otherwise, I don't think anybody would feel safe if we just did the hybrid and then continue with some of the security internally.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Supervisor Shoebridge?
So my question is I guess if we're securing the building, how do we secure the parking lot? To what degree does this go out, and when do we start losing diminishing returns?
Yep.
$1 million is a lot of money right now, even, you know, with our budget in this economy. Is the return on that, the ROI, really going to be there for our constituents?
Yeah, that's the questions you guys got to answer. Yep. Unfortunately, what we're seeing across the nation is really judges has kind of sparked a lot of this stuff. There's some stuff in open records and security for registered deeds, like you can't give out information. It's a lot to do with what happened with judges, and they all unfortunately get shot in their home. People aren't going to come here and shoot me. They're going to wait till I get home and shoot me. So you guys got to make that determination. Yep. Great question, something we've talked a lot about, you know, and that's why I think some employees feel that it's window dressing, that you're not really being secure. I think the single point of entry and even the hybrid, what it would help is probably the crime of passion. Somebody does have a weapon on them, somebody's got a gun, somebody's got a knife on them, they get a bad decision at court, DHS, HR, whatever it is, and they react. So having another security officer, I think, really helps that. Mark does a great job communicating with the courts, with HR, if there's any kind of situation going on. They do a really good coordinating that. Obviously, having another officer is really going to help that. If they got to concentrate on the courtroom area, there's another officer available for other things, stress cords or other meetings. So yeah, that's a big decision.
Any further questions? Thank you, Randy.
Yep.
And you can stay put.
Okay.
The next item would be the review the county administrator 2024 performance goals.
So I just wanted to bring these to the new board, obviously, because there's so many new members, and kind of just talk about how these come about. This is worked out with the executive committee during my evaluation each year, and they're really mutually agreeable. There's some the executive committee felt I should do, and there's some I felt I should do, and we worked that out. What I try to avoid is to have my performance goals become somebody else's. Like if it's something that has to do with HR, it doesn't become Tony's job. It doesn't become Lori's job if it's HR. So I really want these to focus on what I have to do and what the board is looking for. So I'm just going to touch on them just real quick and then just explain how they all go away when something else happens, which is what just happened kind of in this case. So economic development, we're looking at a business park. You're going to, at the next economic development committee meeting, you guys will get an update on that. And then we'll get that to the county board as soon as we can. Next month is a lot of information coming at you guys, lots of resolutions, so it probably won't be next month. But we'll get that moving forward for you guys because you're going to have to make a decision on that this year sometime. And then basically all that came about is our current business park is becoming to capacity. There's less product is what Charlie Walker calls it, so basically less land. They want bigger and bigger projects is what we're seeing across the nation. So that's why we started looking at a second possibility. We had Addie Advantage come in as a consultant, and I think it was in 2020 is when she gave her report. And it really was twofold. One, is it needed? Had to do an analysis of, is there another business park in this region needed? Overwhelmingly, it showed that it was. And then the second part was, what's the areas? Where should we concentrate on? Who should we work with? So all that was in there, and we've been doing that ever since that report came out. It's been moving forward. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with, a pretty big, large chunk of land and several landowners, it takes time to kind of work through all this. So we'll be moving forward with that. In order to get that study done, I went and got a federal grant. You guys ever deal with federal grants? It was $25,000, and I didn't think after I was done it was worth it. But what it did is it allowed us to be eligible for future grants. And that's really the reason I did it, because it could be eligible for infrastructure, purchasing of land, that kind, promoting and all that. So you really need what we discovered, or what I've discovered since I've been here, is that you need a facility or an area that's shovel ready. Really, people are trying to mark you off the list, give any excuse not to come here and go to a different community. And there's various ways we can do this. Obviously, this is going to cost a lot of money and be a big decision, but I think there's ways we can stage it and don't have to take the deep plunge all at one time, which would allow for you guys to make decisions. So budget, really, these are kind of the things we've been doing. Analyze the home placements. Those are doing really well. And I said, we're going to take credit for that because we took blame when it was really bad. I'm not sure what we're doing, but no. Tim Easker, who's the DHS director, really talks about the workers, the social workers, being able to spend time with these families now and actually give services in their homes and keeping them together. And it's just been a huge difference. So that's been great. Long-range plans to sustainability with highway operations. You'll see a bonding thing coming forward. I believe that's next month. That's part of that plan. Implementation employee benefits, huge. Got to be cost effective, but got to be competitive in this market. So we work on that pretty much every day. Chippewa County Public Firearms Range closure. You probably heard about that in the paper over the years. Went out there today with Larry, and the project is completed. We need to wait for a sign off from the EPA because that became a hazardous site once you close it. And they don't think there's going to be any problems. It looks great. I think they did a great job. And then the county board will come forward with a recommendation what to do with that property. We talked about selling it, talked about maybe another use for it. So we'll look at that and bring that forward. ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, the vein of our existence sometimes it feels like, because they just change it all the time. I mean, this ARPA was great, I guess. We used it, I think, very appropriately. We really used it for broadband. We used it for highway, and then we used it to do some longevity for our employees, which I think was great. And there's a few other projects in there, but that is rolling down, and we are on track to get those those funds spent. If we don't spend them, we got to give them back to the federal government. So I think Lori really came up with a great idea of how to get those funds allocated to the highway department, so the ones we aren't going to use, so they can utilize them. Highway always needs more funds. Courthouse security, we just talked about that. County board orientation, you're living it. I'm sure it's exciting for you guys, but so yep, we have to do that every 2 years. And then county financial software conversion. This was one of mine that I asked to be put on here. We're working through that. It's not easy. Again, it's Lori and Andy is really the two that are taking this on. And essentially what they did is they went from an on-premise, I'm going to use words that I hear all the time, on-premise solution to an off-premise solution, which I think means the cloud. What it does to us is gives us less control on our ability to create documents and reports, which is very frustrating. If you've ever been in another organization, the budget here is very transparent. It has every budget item, has a description of every budget item. On Lincoln County, we had every budget item. There was no description for any of the budget items. So when I came here and saw the budget process, I was very, very happy about that. We think we're still going to be able to give the descriptions, but it's not going to be as easy or flow as easy as what we had before. So we'll see. Well, we're working through that, and obviously budget is starting and training starts tomorrow. So our department heads will be seeing it for the first time. So that's all I get. My goals, and are there any questions on any of them? Oh, I was going to tell you how this all blows up. Hospital system decides to leave, and time, effort is on that big time. Probably the biggest thing we're seeing with that currently is the EMS concern. So I'm actually meeting with all the EMS groups on Thursday night and going to talk about their concerns and issues and see if there's any way we can look at some solutions for that.
Any further questions for Randy? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now move on to item C, department reports. Our favorite presenter is Lori. Financial updates.
Love listening to me. All right. I will try to make this really brief. So I ended up sharing this with my finance team, and we talked for a little over an hour, so I won't that. We like this kind of thing, us boring finance people. All right, so I wanted to first talk a little bit about our accounting structure. So our accounting structure, for our accounts, I should say, we have 4 different sections in our accounts set up. The first thing is the fund, and then we have a thing called department. So you'd have the treasurer or the sheriff's department or something like that, treasurer's office. And then you're going to have division, because there's many divisions within each of these, a lot of different departments. Like in the sheriff's department, you'd have the jail, you have patrol, stuff like that. And then the last is everybody usually has all the same ones. You have wages and benefits and telephone and postage, those type of things. So for our presentation tonight, we're in all my future presentations, we just show it from a fund level, and then it will show each of the departments within each of those funds. So from an accounting standpoint, the funds, there's different funds types, I should say, and they're used to account for transactions for different purposes. So for general, that's usually where we account for everything except for the special funds. You'll hear more. The special revenue funds, those are usually when you have the restricted funds or you use state aid, like DHS, Human Services, I'm sorry, I use acronyms. ARPA, Randy had mentioned that before. Debt service, that's where we actually account for all of our annual debt payments in there. We have capital project funds. They always start with a 4, and those usually are where we keep the money that we bond for projects. For usually if you're going to bond for highway projects, we put that money in there. When highway spends that money, we charge it to that account right there. And then we have enterprise funds. We only have one enterprise fund. and it's kind of very similar to a business of how we have to report it from a financial standpoint with our financial reports. And that is the Land Development Fund. And then we have enterprise funds, internal service funds. Those are usually for departments who help or self-funded health insurance, we have Flex. Those are like self-funded plans, I would say. And we just have one fiduciary fund and trust fund. They're kind of the same thing. They're usually money that is for other people. And I don't go through this every time. I only say this first time because I have a whole bunch of new members, so I feel like, so that you can understand my language that I want to share with you. So we talk about fund balance, and this is the money that's available for people that we hold, like it's kind of like a savings account for you at home. So it'd be very similar. And at the end of every year, we have different kinds of accounts or funds. We have, when we call it lapsing funds, that means like in the general fund, in my account, we're looking at the revenues and expenses. So my account is all property tax levy, and we look at all the expenses that we had for 2023, and whatever that difference is going to lapse back to the unassigned general fund balance. If I have a non-lapsing fund, then what's going to happen is that difference between revenues and expenses, that is going to go to that special account for use for a special purpose. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about 2023. All right, when you look at this report, you're going to see way over on the right-hand side. That's really where I'm going to focus this part of the presentation on. I'm looking at accounts that had a big variance that I'll just kind of discuss quick. The first one, and also on that column, it includes lapsing and lapsing and non-lapsing accounts for closing. The general county, that amount right there is due to the net transfers for in and out of the general fund. There were, we have fund balance policy requirements that some monies were transferred. I'll share a little bit more later. We have Department of Administration. We actually put the 7-1 increase in an account in there for $292,000, but there's a lot of accounts in there, so that was the majority of that account, of that variance. We had the county treasurer. That's a huge number. And a lot had to do with that we had excellent interest earnings in 2023. Just to look at a comparable, in December of 2022, our interest rate at the state investment pool was 0.07%. And in December of 2023, it was 5.38%. The clerk of court, they had that was the bad news one. We had a large loss, and it's attributable to the court-appointed attorneys. Wisconsin Counties Association is really working with us, with the state legislator, the state, to try to make some changes so that we can get it reimbursed from the state. You know, it's a state-required thing, and the county pays. The sheriff, it looks like a big number. That is not an operations issue. There's other things embedded in there. Part of it is that we use $541,679 for the radio tower project. That is almost complete. We transferred $750,000 out of that account. It was with the resolution 4523 because we knew we had money left in that radio tower account that was that we wanted to help fund for DHS for out-of-home placements. Telecommunications, we actually had a loss because we have so many vacancies in there of $95,515. And another cost that the sheriff's department never really ever can account, you know, it's not a normal cost that happens, is we have a juvenile that is in a minor at a detention center. And last year, we paid $92,675. That's not budgeted money. It's some that's not expected. We did get some funding that we didn't know we were going to get from the federal. It was ARPA LATCF funds, and it was $50,000, so it was helped to offset half of it. The jail, we actually had a loss of $249,216. A lot of it has to do with that we have revenue shortage because we were onboarding prisoners from other governments. And we're seeing that food and supplies are seeing large increases. Land conservation, good news. We had stumpage revenues, which were $968,180 more than what was budgeted. And public health, I know you see a pretty large number there, and those savings were due to vacancies and indirect cost reimbursement. And I wanted to share, I showed every department on the next few slides so you can see what the difference was. I just talked about the ones that I thought were pretty more important and had a bigger variance. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. Okay, so this is when we close. If we close all of our lapsing funds, we actually would have increased our unassigned general fund balance by $2,681,425.06. But due to the fund balance policy that we have that has like a maximum that we can have for in certain fund balance, different funds, and also in the non-lapsing accounts, we actually had to transfer some money into the general fund that are showing down at the bottom. So those additional transfers were $1,334,374. So when you add that 2.6 number plus that 1.3, the amount that we could have increased our unassigned general fund balance was by that $4,015,799.55. But what happened is to keep us from having to budget additional money for upcoming issues and projects, the county administrator is utilizing $2,310,000 for those items that are listed here. I just want to touch on a couple. So the county administrator had actually talked about the HSHS closure contingency. So we're putting $250,000 in there. There's a lot of our departments that are actually affected by this. You can pick the jail, human services, human resources, because when we have new employees, so there's just a lot of different departments. Public health actually had some. So we know that there's a lot of departments that were affected. So we put this money away into this contingency fund. And in order for us to use the money out of that contingency fund, we have to bring a resolution to you to transfer that money out. So you guys would have total control. And I can't remember if it requires a 2/3 or a 3/4 vote. So I want you to understand that it has to be a major majority of the board that would want that. Let's see here. The other one I wanted to talk about was we actually did put some $100,000 away for that juvenile that is in that detention center. We wanted to transfer the $100,000 because 2024, we know we're going to have those costs. And last we heard is that the court date is probably going to be in 2025. So we were trying to think ahead. Non-highway fleet, we transferred $300,000. And really a lot of it is because we haven't increased over the years for the operations, and they have been running in the negative. And it's when we talk about the non-highway fleet, that would be for your sheriff squads, land conservation, forest management, facilities and parks have vehicles in there. And if you guys go to a meeting and we have a fleet of vehicles that you can actually check out, and that includes those too. So that's really any vehicles that we have at the county except for highway. So that was general fund. Any questions about 2023? Yes.
I actually have a number of questions. How much do you anticipate the budget going up this year, and does it exceed inflation?
Well, the problem that's going to happen is it depends on if you're talking about tax levy. Tax levy, we are limited on how much we can increase, and it's only by our net new construction that we can increase. Other revenues, state aids and stuff will actually increase. Maybe not to the extent that we need for like wages and benefit increases. That I'm sure it will increase, I'm pretty sure, but I can't tell you the amount for sure.
Maybe give them the timeline when we get those numbers.
What do you mean?
When do we get how much we're going to get from state aid? Give them the timeline for that.
Well, you mean the state shared revenue? Yeah. Oh, well, I think there's more to it than that though, because the state aid is all those other departments.
I don't understand that.
Oh, the state shared revenues that we get we only get it on an annual basis for the most part, as the majority is paid in November of each year. So.
Well, being new at this, I probably don't have the right way to form this, so please excuse me, but, when you lost that 214,000 and change, does that trigger something to take a look at it harder next time in that same area, to anticipate better, or how do you learn from that?
In what account were you talking about?
You mentioned you had a loss of 214,000 and change. And what I'm asking is, in everything I've ever done, we've had action after action reports or gone over what we could do better next time. Do you have that same process in place? Or something?
Yeah, a lot of times we are trying to do different things. We will we know it's a problem area, that we had that problem for a couple years in a row. And then when we're looking at the budget, we're like, if we have any tax levy, can we fix that somehow? The problem is that we're very limited on what we can do for tax levy for sure. And that's what a lot of our budget, 21 million of it is tax levy. So a lot of it is constricted, and then we have to have departments come up with other ways of, is there other ways we can do things to be more cost effective? And that's what we have to look for, cost savings.
You talked about transferring money. I didn't really understand.
Okay.
That's because I'm new, but what is the best option? To keep it in place or transferring, and what are the advantages of both?
Okay. The advantage of actually transferring the money what can happen is if you don't transfer money out, like if you're talking about the county administrator transfers, if you don't transfer those funds, your unassigned fund balance is going to grow, and it's going to be hard to utilize that money. You end up having to use that in the budget process, and then you have it's called a structural deficit in your budget, because you're using, it's kind of like at home, you're using your savings account to pay for your lights. Does that make any sense? So that's why it's usually not a good system. The advantage of having a higher number in the unassigned fund balance, though, is that it does help our bond rating more. I don't know, there are certain limits, though, that the county audit, our auditors, they will actually kind of give you a limit of what they don't think you should go above too much, above 45, so.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any further questions on that?
All right.
Now on to the next.
Yeah, now we get to talk about special revenue funds. All right. For public health, they would have actually had a loss of $115,679 in this account. And it's really attributable to, they had us restructure in public health where they took from the community health department, which is in the general fund, they ended up building a new division in the Public Health 204 fund that was a restructure called Planning and Strategy Division. Aging and our ADRC and Aging, they actually had a net gain of $18,834.61, but due to the fund balance policy, it was transferred out. Human Services actually had a net gain of $2,023,671.36. But there were a couple factors besides operations that caused this. So we transferred $750,000 from that radio tower project into this fund. So it's considered as revenue in this fund. So that's part of what would be part of that that $2 million. And then also we had $510,000, which were indirect revenues from RWC. So there was approximately $760,000 of operational revenues related to that reduced out-of-home placements. And I have it on the next slide to give you a little more detail about that. So the bar graph on the left compares the total child placement costs for years 2020 through 2023. And if you note that in 2022, we had costs of $2,651,578, while in 2023, you can see we had a dramatic decrease of $1,919,400. The reason that, if you go look over on the bar graph on the right, you can actually see our child placements costs just for 2023 by quarter. You can see we were on course to have a $2.4 million of costs for these out-of-home placement costs. But you can see in quarter 3 and 4, they just drastically reduced. And the reason why they did reduce is because some of the children aged out of the system, because if they're 18 and under, they age out of that part of it and they can go to a different program. And then some of them were actually reunited with families. So, and if you look at the bar graph, that table right at the bottom, that will just show you how we had such a difference. When you look at those acute residential group placements, so those are usually children who have medical and mental needs that can't be taken care of in a regular foster home situation. So, and then, so if you look at December of 2022, we had 10 children in those kind of facilities. They call them acute residential. And then in December 2023, we had only 4. So that helped us reduce our costs substantially. And then you can see the same thing with foster care. We have cut that in about half. And there's a little bit more detail here about what we just talked about and other departments that were part of that special revenue funds. So the next thing we'll talk about is a special revenue fund called sales tax. So for 2023, we actually had a sales tax growth revenue of 3.2% from 2022. And it probably was about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we actually had opioid abatement settlements with a lot of a lot of companies are going through this settlement process. So we don't have a number of what we're going to get for revenues. Wisconsin Counties Association is supposed to be getting us something, but we have not seen anything yet. So what we can only do is we're just showing over on the left-hand side is just what our revenues have been. And over on the right-hand side is what we spent in 2023. And I should say that there is certain criteria and certain types of projects or what you buy that are eligible for that too, as part of the settlements. And here's the ARPA. I think the big thing that I wanted to show you is this is just a snapshot at 2023. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or later or now. I can answer anything. So this right here is actually our ARPA that we've spent from the onset of ARPA in 2021. The previous slide was only showing you for 2023. Debt service funds, these are just our annual debt payments. And usually our debt payments are paid for with sales tax funds. We move money into there to pay for those with sales tax funds. And as you can see, at the end of last year, we had $8,450,000 outstanding debt principal. And here's capital projects funds. So that's if we issue debt. Any of the proceeds that are in there are actually paid out of this account. So we paid out the whole $3 million because that was for the highway for the 1 year for 2023. And here are our enterprise funds. We had land development, that's a land development fund. It just shows you how complex it is because there's a couple of options for a buyer to buy property out in the Lake Wissota Business Park. And we sold one property. Internal service funds. I went too fast here. In workers' comp in 2023, the fund had actually a positive variance of $310,064.13, but $171,660.10 was transferred due to that fund balance policy. And the liability insurance, we actually had transferred $500,000, and that was one of those CA, the county administrator transfers. We moved $500,000 into this account for future, and we had a negative fund balance. And right here, you'll see more of a description about each of them. And then we have the dog license fund. We only maintain $1,000 in here for fund balance. What happens is we collect these fees, and then we have any claims that we pay out, and then the net is paid back out to the municipalities. These two are just cracking me up over here. All right, that is everything about 2023. And I'll move on to 2024. And this one is going to go pretty fast because I'm not going to talk too much about this. So we have, what I'm looking in here for first quarter, I'm looking for revenues that are less than 25% collected, and I'm looking for expenses that are more than 25%. The county board, it's because the expenses were at 29.1%, and that is just because we have contracts that we pay at the first of the year. The general county, the revenues are really under, and that the reason why we're short there is because of the fact that we get our state shared revenues in November of each year. The county clerk, you're seeing that she has expenses of 79.7%, and that's because we had the library allocation that was paid out at the beginning of the year of $953,407. The county treasurer, she actually has quite a bit of revenue already, and that is because of the investment rates that the interest rates and the investments that we're getting. Register of Deeds, actually the revenue is a bit low compared to what we would expect, but it's because of the economy. That's one of those departments that goes up and down with the economy, so. And child support, you see that pretty big loss over there because they have very little income over there. And that is because we receive quarterly state aid funding. The special revenue funds. Let's see here. The jail assessment fees were actually, they're a little behind at only 14.1%. The land records, That's very similar, right, with Register of Deeds. That's how the funds are being populated, is because of who is going to get in those kind of documents. So we're short there too. Sales tax review. So when we get the money from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue, we receive it 2 months later. So what they collect in January, we ended up getting on on March 31st. So that's why we only showed January up there. In our opioid funds, we've gotten a little bit in there. American Rescue Plan Act funds, all we've gotten for revenue is the interest income because we've already received all those ARPA funds and they're sitting in the unearned revenues until the end of the year. Because from an accounting standards, you can't account for that as revenue for the year that we received them because you have to have your expenses and your revenues align. And that unearned revenue is just kind of considered a liability account because we could potentially owe it back. But we won't. Thank goodness. Debt service funds. Remember, this is our annual debt payments. You can see down here if the plan is that we're going to be bringing forward bonding information to you next month. And if we didn't bond, our end of the year balance would be $6,880,000. And there is nothing here because we don't have any activity. The health insurance fund, we're actually seeing quite a loss right now. Our claims are pretty high. That's what's causing that loss right now. And we've hit a few people have already went to our stop loss. It's kind of like a deductible that we have for our self-funded plan. And then we have the self-funded liability insurance. We always pay our WMIC premiums at the beginning of the year, so it always shows that it's expensed right away. And here are the enterprise and trust agency funds activity. And that's all I have for this one. Any questions?
With the loss of ARPA funds, how does it impact our budget?
Well, last year, I believe we had budgeted about $4 million for expecting that that's what we're going to spend out. So it could potentially reduce by that, but I know the highway department has a lot of projects that are in the pipeline with CIP, so that's why it's so hard to tell you if our budget's going to go up or down, because we have things that add to it and subtract from it, and until we see exactly how that's going to be impacted by from the departments, it's hard to say if our budget's going to go up or down.
When will you know?
Yeah, and we didn't use any ARPA funds for operations. It was all just projects.
That's cool. Thank you.
And out on the employee portal it's under government and then finance. I believe that there's an area for the ARPA plan about what was approved through the ARPA plan that you'd be able to find too. So you'd be able to see everything.
Any further questions or comments?
We have one.
Supervisor Guthman.
Just a couple of quick questions, and if I need to, I can set up an appointment with either you or a department head, but you mentioned that the claims for the self-insured funds have seemingly to be going up, which we all know happens a lot of times with costs of healthcare. Knowing with HSHS, we've had some changes occur, and Randy's got an appointment coming up here with EMS. I'm just wondering, are there some discussions going on about how can we address that preventively in looking at those areas that may likely continue to increase?
You know, we are looking at things in the health insurance account. We are actually looking at different options of, we have already went through having Reform Med is our company that we actually go to try to help offset these costs. honestly, what's happening is we have a few high claimants that are hitting our stop loss right away. And usually I haven't seen anything with stop loss for the last couple of years until it was usually around September, October is when they first started hitting, and they already hit in February. So that's our issue.
And then a follow-up question, in the opioid funds, are there any opportunities to look at options that bring us more further preventively, so that we come around this full circle to prevent some of the issues that we see with need for Narcan and juveniles that are addicted and out of home placements and that type of thing?
Well, we are, in the budget presentation from 2024, if we go look at those documents out there, there is an area about the opioid projects that are on the 2024 budget. But we do have some where it's Narcan. They look a lot, the public health is looking at the overdose fatality review. So they're like looking at what they had taken, et cetera. So I do really think that there is different things that are being done. I just can't articulate exactly what every department's doing.
It's just kind of looking at a full circle, so that's helpful. And then one last question is that I saw that earlier on, there were additional costs with out of our own county jail costs or something to that effect. And almost what I understood, and maybe I misunderstood, is that it seemed like we took that loss because we were taking in other folks who required the jail.
Well, actually, it's because what we can do as for a revenue shortage is you can actually board prisoners from other municipalities or agencies. So we haven't done that. But we did help offset some of it in the 2024 budget. We increased that, gave them money so that they weren't so short.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, seeing no more in the speaker queue. On to the 2025.
Budget?
Yes.
All right. All right. All right, I'll be pretty quick on this one. I'm kind of getting hoarse. All right, so tonight we're just kicking off our budget process. So the reason we have a budget is so that we have a financial plan for the next year. So this year, we're going to be adopting the 2025 budget. Let's see here. There's actually 3 phases of the budget. You have department head requested, which goes to each of the policy committees for review. You have a county administrator proposed, and you'll have the county board approved in November when you approve the budget. I have a few of these. We'll go a little bit more in detail about some of these definitions later. So calculating the tax rate. So the tax rate is calculated with using equalized value, your property tax levy, and then you divide that out. You'll see the equation down there, and that's how you get your tax rate. It's a little more complex than that because you got to get the property tax levy, but that's in a summary of how it's calculated. And then tax levy, this is how most counties would look at this, is that you have your expenses of what the budget is, you have your other revenues, and then your bottom is your tax levy of what you need to be balanced. All right, and then here's a 5-year history of our tax, it shows our property tax levy, our equalized valuation, and tax rate. Please note that when you have the equalized valuation versus the tax rate, it has an inverse relationship. So if your equalized valuation goes up, your tax rate goes down. So that's been very attributable why our tax rate has went down. And here's a comparison of the tax rates by different counties, and this is from the 2023 budget. Wisconsin Counties Association will have this out in July for the 2024 budgets. As you can see, Chippewa County is the 7th lowest. And you can see over on the right-hand side our contiguous counties. We're the lowest in our contiguous counties. And here are the roles and responsibilities of different people. So the county administrator, he's required to provide a sales tax plan and a proposed balanced budget to the county board for approval. Department administration will prepare the position-based budget report to assist the departments. And we also coordinate with the county clerk to get that budget summary published. And department heads, what they'll do is they'll set up their budget, make up their budget, and then they're going to meet with you guys at the policy committees to review their budget. You won't actually approve the budget. What you're going to do is you're going to say that it's okay to forward to the county administrator for his review. And the policy committee meets with the department heads, and I'm sorry, I kind of got a little ahead of myself. All right, executive committee. So they're really truly the finance committee of our county. And then what's going to happen is they'll get the county administrator proposed budget at that October meeting, October 1st meeting this year. And then the county board, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but you guys are going to, through the year until we get to that process, you're going to be approving a lot of resolutions. You know, we're going to talk about the capital improvement program. We're going to talk about, resolutions for how much to increase for wages and health insurance in August. So there's just a lot of things that are building blocks to build up to the budget when you guys get it approved. So you guys get little snippets as you go. Here's an overview of the budget timeline. I think here the main thing that will happen is that tomorrow the county administrator, he's going to forward the budget letter, and we'll start the budget process for the departments. They always love this. And then in June, we'll send out that final position-based budget report to the departments. And they'll really get going on their budgets then. And then they're going to bring them to you guys, the policy committee here, in your policy committees through July. And then in August, we're going to be compiling the information and meeting with department heads to talk about their budgets. And in October, the county administrator will present that proposed budget to the executive committee. It's going to be published by state statute. It has to be published for 15 days in the newspaper, or it's got to be published 15 days prior to the public hearing, which will be the first Thursday in November. All right, so then what's going to happen is you're going to have 2 meetings in November. The first meeting is going to be November 7th. Thursday, November 7th. What's going to happen is we're going to have a public hearing. People, the public are able to come in, make comments about the budget. And then the county administrator will present his budget. And then that's when you guys are going to debate the budget. And we would need to have a balanced budget, meaning revenues equal expenses, before we leave. Our second meeting in November is going to be the following Tuesday on November 12th. And that's when we're just going to adopt the tax levy resolution, which was approved back on Thursday. It's just a formal process of approving the tax levy. I really wanted to share, I know Randy had mentioned this, but we had, in December of 2023, we transitioned to that cloud environment for our software. And with Springbrook, they don't have that option for the budgeting that we had before. So we actually had to go with a, like I would say, a sub-software of Springbrook where they talk to each other. And that's what we're working on right now. And we'll have, the reports will look different. But please don't hesitate to reach out if you guys have any questions about budget. We're always here. Also, I wanted to share that if you had wanted to look at any past budget information that is out on the employee portal or also out onto the website under the, you'd go Government Administration, Finance Division, and then Budget and Audit. But don't hesitate, reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd love to help you.
Again, any questions at all? For all of you that thought county government and was very simple, you can see the county is responsible for quite a lot of things, and there's an awful lot that goes on here, and I think we all keep learning about it. So thank you very much. Move on to item 8, the business items. Resolution 14-24, resolution to request wake surfing and wakeboarding standards. Linda?
Resolution number 14-24, resolution to request the state legislature to set standards for wake surfing and wakeboarding as part of 2023 Assembly Bill 656. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby request that the Wisconsin legislature engage in meaningful discussions around 2023 AB 656 to pass standards for wake surfing and wakeboarding that balance the right of everyone to recreate on waters of the state of Wisconsin by doing the follows. 1, requiring that wake surfing and wakeboarding operation occur at least 600 feet from the shore to prohibit enhanced wake creation in waters. 2, prohibiting wake surfing and wakeboarding in waters shallower than at least 20 feet in depth. 3, requiring that wake surfing and wakeboarding operation only occur on lakes with a minimum acreage of 500 acres and at least 50 acres of a contiguous minimum depth of 20 feet. 4, requiring that wake surfing and wakeboarding only occur at a minimum distance of 300 feet from other watercraft. Be it further resolved that Wisconsin legislature allow local governments the ability to set standards that are more restrictive than those being proposed in 2023 AB 656 if necessary to protect local interests. And be it further resolved that County Clerk forward a copy of this resolution to the Governor of the State of Wisconsin, State Representative Rob Summerfield, State Representative Karen Hurd, State Senator Jesse James, the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association, and the Wisconsin Counties Association. Forwarded to the County Board by the Land Conservation and Forest Management Committee.
We'll be looking for a motion to approve, to bring it to the floor.
Omar makes the motion.
Omar makes a motion to approve.
Flynn seconds the motion.
Supervisor Flynn seconds. Any discussion?
So as you heard, that was a mouthful, so I'm going to take a little time to give you some background, to give you the information that you can make your decision tonight. This resolution, number one, is not an ordinance. It's not asking for the county to pass local laws themselves, but allowing local control in the county for towns and villages and residents, around the lakes to make local decisions based on their lakes, not a one-size-fits-all. A lot of times with state regulation, it'll say not to exceed or not to be more restrictive. And that's what this one, what the state is proposing, not to be more restrictive. And as you'll see with the different types of lakes we have here in Chippewa County, their proposal doesn't fit everything that we have here. Wake sports is a little bit different than water skiing or other tubing recreation on our lakes. The wake sports fill the boats up with a large ballast, making them sit lower in the water, and then as they propel themselves through the water, causes waves that are 2 to 3 times higher and 12 times more powerful than our typical water sports. The boats themselves can be used as a typical watercraft, so we're not saying wake boats are prohibited, just the sporting if they're utilizing it in that capacity. Some of the concerns, like I said, with the shoreline erosion, with the waves much more powerful, they're causing a lot more erosion, a lot more damage on our shoreline. Sediment suspending in the water, when it's pushing down, it can push thrust down to 15 feet deep into the water. What this is doing is it's disrupting the bottom, not only disrupting the habitat for the aquatic life that's living on the bottom, But what we have in Wisconsin, you'll hear talk about like legacy sediment. So like say there was erosion that occurred and then it finally settled out. They're finding when these wake boats go through and redisturbing the sediment, we're seeing increased algal blooms and increased phosphorus nutrients in the water just from them disturbing the bottom. So there's kind of a twofold disruption with that aspect of it. By disrupting the bottom, there are just impacts to aquatic plants. And also with the wave action on the shores, a lot of our aquatic birds nest along the shoreline. And with the increased waves, it's disrupting those nests and the egg rearing of those birds. The last thing is also aquatic invasive species. I'm sure if anyone has ever been on a lake in Wisconsin, you have the college students that intern through the summer checking to make sure that you don't have aquatic hitchhikers like your Eurasian water milfoil on your trailer or on your boat. You have to empty your water well, your live well, so that you're not taking water from one lake to another. When these boats fill up with water, they do drain, but it's very difficult to drain those completely. So there's most likely bits and pieces of different, hitchhikers in these boats. So taking them from then one lake to another may cause the spread of these aquatic invasive species. So with all that, there's been many different groups that have been looking at recommendations on if and where these sports could occur. And so what our resolution is asking, the 600 feet from the shoreline is so that these increased waves have a chance to dissipate before they get to the shoreline to cause the erosion. Prohibiting the wake surfing and wakeboarding in waters shallower than 20 feet. That's so that we're trying to stay deep enough so that they're not disrupting the bottom of the lake. 500 acres and at least 50 acres of contiguous minimum depth of 20 feet. So this is allowing not only other boating and watercraft on the lake, but allowing an area where because obviously they're not just driving one way, stopping, doing a Y turn and coming back, right? When you're water surfing or water skiing, you're making big turns. And so we're trying to find a way where there's room for these boats to move around in while still allowing other use on the lake. And then requiring that wake surfing and wakeboarding only occur at a minimum distance of 300 feet from other watercraft. So that if you're in a kayak or in a canoe, obviously, if you've ever been even just a regular boat, you need to turn perpendicular so that you don't get capsized. And so we're also taking into consideration those low use, low impact water sports. So with all that, are there any questions?
Supervisor Guthman?
That was from before.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
That's not the, sorry, I'm looking at the speaker's queue. President now?
Yep, that was right.
Okay, Supervisor Shoebridge.
So is it intent, because this would forbid wake surfboarding on the Chippewa River?
So we did take a look at where it would affect. There are 10 water bodies in Chippewa County that are over 500 acres. But after looking at basically the 1,200 feet wide, if you're 600 feet from both shores, it narrows it down to the Holcomb flowage, Otter Lake, Cornell flowage, Long Lake, Lake Wissota, and a portion of the Chippewa River. However, then we look into the 20 feet deep. That drops it down to 4, which would be Holcomb, Long Lake, Lake Wissota, and a portion of the Chippewa River southwest of Lake Wissota.
And then are these lakes going to be marked so that people know what areas have that 20 foot? Because if they go, generally you don't know the depth of that. You're not going to know that boating out there.
So once again, this isn't something that Chippewa County is enforcing, but it would allow, like if Lake Wissota wanted to then enforce this, their lake association could, yes, they would have signage, like they have their no wake signage. So it would fall on the municipality that's passing the regulation.
Okay, Supervisor Kelly.
So we're just opening the door for other municipalities to regulate these waterways?
Correct.
And you don't think that's gonna cause a physical impact to Chippewa County with these voters?
So we were hearing from the lake associations, so the people that are on the lakes, utilizing the lake, asking for support of this. So I feel, the people that are using the water source are the ones, coming to us.
Right. They will be, how many lakes? Chippewa County has, 130 lakes, right?
I don't know the total number of our lakes, between the potholes and the flowages.
Right. So, and we're gonna narrow that down to 4. Okay. These boats are what, $85,000 to $300,000? Roughly?
Yep.
I don't think they're out there messing around. Right? They're just out there doing their thing at 10 to 12 miles an hour. Thank you.
Supervisor Seidlitz?
I just don't like the whole idea of this being over-regulated, the wakeboard thing and stuff. I think I think it should be just left alone because only four lakes are gonna be able to wakeboard on. And like you said, they only go 10, 12 miles an hour when they're wakeboarding. And you mentioned the blooms and stuff, the algae blooms and the erosion. But right now, Madison and the DNR, they're not caring about what's going into our waters, what's polluting our well waters or anything like that. So I say let the wakeboards go.
Supervisor Garrett?
So there was no mention of enforcement or penalty. Is that not important for what we're trying to do here?
We're not passing the ordinance, so therefore we're not involved in the.
We're making a recommendation, and without that being in the recommendation, isn't that a problem?
So the state currently had, which bill, so there's a bill out there with them setting minimum not to exceed requirements. So that's what this resolution was, to say that if it wasn't to exceed, we would like the minimum standards to be higher if they're going to affect local control. So we were addressing a current state statute or proposition.
Supervisor Bergeron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment. I received a handful of calls or emails about this from folks out by Yellow River and Camp Kenwood and stuff like that, and they were in support of it, just not because they were anti-wakeboarding, but because there's a time and place for everything. It kind of, mirrors, we have weight restrictions on particular bridges and speed limits on particular roads. It's not because you're not allowed to use them, you just need to use them in a particular manner that's safe and appropriate. I think that's, and maybe the discussion around what the recommendation distances are and things of that nature is warranted, but as a whole, I think the conversation needs to start because this is only going to become more popular. And once it becomes more and more popular, it's harder and harder to get standards set. And we just need to get out ahead of it before there is an issue, because absolutely we want that recreation in our county, but it needs to be done in an appropriate place with the proper, environmental impacts and then safety to others using the lake. Because part of what some of the calls I got were folks near Camp Kenwood. There's a lot of quiet water sports that go on near Camp Kenwood with all the different things they put on there in the summer. And then one private landowner talked about how their boat on the dock is being damaged in there because of the wakes getting pushed in. And then, there's no one's, it's not illegal right now in terms of how they're operating. And he just wants his private property that protected. And then on top of that, just a point of clarification, this isn't necessarily opening the door. Madison's currently has a bipartisan bill in front of them, correct?
Correct.
And this is supporting that, saying, please, look into this. Here's some of our thoughts. And then ultimately the state's going to dictate what the level of regulation is, what the fines could be, and what local municipalities can and can't do.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Supervisor Hennick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Without regulations, you shouldn't even be talking about this. You got to know the consequences of passing something against a whole sport. I don't know much about this, but we need to understand where this is going. Now, I do understand the protecting of people's boats on their dock and things like that, but I don't think there's enough information to even talk about it. How can we make a decision on something without knowing the consequences of that decision? I just can't do that without knowing the full picture. Thank you.
Supervisor Bomar?
Thank you, Chair. There are 130 lakes in Chippewa County or so, but all of these lakes are multiple use, right? And ultimately, if we end up allow these boats on all of the lakes, which wouldn't be appropriate because I don't think boat launch. But the point being is, one use shouldn't outweigh the other, is my sense of this. And if there are many wake boats on, with my limited experience, it makes it inaccessible for many of the other activities to be occurring. Part of that multiple use is for humans, of course, but it also for wildlife. And one of the things that we admire about the Chippewa County lakes is all of the wildlife. And there's lots of evidence to suggest that loon populations are being reduced because the wakeboard is disrupting their ability to nest. And as Linda had pointed out. Secondly, it turns out from my reading, the wake boats are most effective at doing the wave voting in water deeper than 20 feet. Moreover, what happens is that at less than 20 feet, that thrust that's putting down starts to bounce back and decreases the actual wave. So the 20 feet depth is really important for the boats, at least from what I've read. Even professional wave boat people are talking about you need to be in at least 20 feet of water to get and to do what you want to do to be most productive in the sport. So the consequences are having local control is really important, right? The consequences are if we don't get in and start at least stating an opinion now about something like this, 5 years from now, we're going to say, we want to get rid of them, and it's going to be too late, right? So, I'm all in favor of this. It's a recommendation. I get it. We're making, we want to get on the front end of something instead of on the back end of something, and here's an opportunity. So, thank you.
Supervisor Mueller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My only question is, has the DNR offered any opinion on this matter? I know you talked about the Lake Association and stuff like that, but I'm just wondering if DNR has weighed in.
We have not heard from DNR. I've heard from the Lake Associations and Green Fire from Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Shoebridge.
This is not a new sport. It has been around a long time, over a decade that I know of. And this isn't just restricting something, it is canceling it. So essentially, this is so restrictive, even on that big of a lake, being that far distance from other boats, you're basically saying people can't do it anymore. So once we pass this, are we gonna do the same thing with jet skis? Jet skis doing the dances and they do the same thing. Are we gonna restrict out jet skis from doing things? When we have them restricted out, what's the end goal? What is appropriate on a lake? This is just not a restriction. This is essentially canceling the sport in our county.
Supervisor Kirby.
I want to know if we've gotten any feedback from any of the surrounding counties, Eau Claire, Menominee, or Dunn County, that are they looking at this as well? And have you talked to anybody, any of those lake associations around the region, what their thoughts are on this kind of proposed legislation?
So this isn't the first resolution in the state of Wisconsin. I believe this is, I think 13 other counties have already passed this or similar types of resolutions. I know Oneida County just recently did So no, we're not, the surrounding counties, I don't know specifically. But I do know that there are several of the recreational counties that have passed it. I think Sawyer County was the first.
Are they substantially similar to these?
Yep.
As they've been laid out? Okay.
Supervisor Guthman.
Wasn't there some additional data or information that was being proposed as well, that the university was going to do further aquatic studies or that type of thing to give us the stats and what it looked like in regards to wave pressures and all of that kind of thing? Wasn't that part of some of this too?
So correct, there was a separate bill that was being pushed or brought forth in the legislature talking about that as well. So yep,
It's not necessarily connected with this particular resolution.
correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor Seidlitz.
I disagree with Dwayne. I just think that you're canceling out a whole sport. 600 feet from the shore, that's an eighth of a mile almost. I mean, there's nothing that wide around, and then you're 300 feet from water, another watercraft. I mean, that's going to be hard on Lake Wissota or Holcomb for anybody to, because you know you're going to just have somebody just purposely go out by where somebody's wakeboarding, and they're going to turn them in and say, oh, you're too close, and you're going to cancel out a whole culture. And, you know, I don't see that many people out there wakeboarding now. I know, yeah, the sport's going to get popular, but 600 feet, there's no place on the Chippewa River that I could see 600 feet from, it's an eighth of a mile. That's canceling out a whole recreational part that people could be tourism coming to Chippewa County, and we need tourism.
Okay, I see no one queued up to speak anymore. It's time to call for the vote. Press green to approve.
Hang on one second. I lost my Now you're good.
And red to disapprove.
Yes, 7 no.
Resolution passes 13-7. Item 2, resolution 15-24, resolution to support Senate Bill 348, foreign ownership of property. And entertain a motion to approve. Oh, sorry.
Resolution 15-24, resolution in support of 2023 Senate Bill 348 regarding foreign ownership of agricultural and forestry lands. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does respectfully request that the state of Wisconsin in the next legislative biennium approve 2023 Senate Bill 348 regarding foreign ownership of agricultural and forestry lands in Wisconsin. And be it further resolved that the county clerk forward a copy of this resolution to the governor of the state of Wisconsin, State Senator Jesse James, State Representative Rob Summerfield, State Representative Karen Hurd, the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association, and the Wisconsin Counties Association. Forwarded to the county board by the Land Conservation and Forest Management Committee.
Now we'll entertain a motion to approve.
Flater, so makes move.
Supervisor Flater.
Let's second it.
Seidlitz, second.
Okay,
Now we're discussion.
so this resolution that was passed by the previous Land Conservation Forest Management Committee in March addresses a bill that was going through the legislature, Senate Bill 348, that previously or currently the state of Wisconsin allows up to 640 acres of total agriculture or forestry land per foreign company. The state of Wisconsin is now proposing dropping that 640 acres down to 50 acres per foreign entity. And this resolution is basically stating that we support the legislation.
Supervisor Gehrig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess what I'm concerned about is why this is restricted to agricultural and forestry. I think it should be wider than that.
So the law that allows the reporting is the Agricultural Foreign Investment and Disclosure Act. So the law that regulates it is based on agriculture. So that's where Department of Ag and Department of Ag Trade and Consumer Protection are the ones that oversee it. So that's why it's based on ag and forestry. That's where our authority comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more people wanting to speak, we'll call the vote. In green to approve and red to disapprove. Yes.
19 yes, 1 no.
Okay, the resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, Resolution 16-24, resolution to create a Jailer 2 position to provide courthouse security.
Resolution number 16-24, resolution to create a new full-time jailer position in the jail division of the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department as a mid-year request to allow for an additional assignment of full-time courthouse security officer duties to a Jailer 2. Now therefore be it resolved that effective upon passage, an additional jailer position is hereby created within the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department Jail Division to allow for an additional assignment of full-time courthouse security officer duties to a Jailer 2, forwarded to the County Board by the Executive Committee.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Flynn moves to approve.
Supervisor Flynn, move to approve.
Supervisor
Rochelle
Haig, seconds.
All right,
One of us. Supervisor Rochelle seconds.
Supervisor Rochelle, second. Go to discussion.
All right, thanks, Chair. Just to give some background to this position, the Jailer 2 position in general was created, I believe it was last year. It was for a couple reasons. One, it allows for advancement in the jail. Typically, people come in as a jailer. This Jailer 2 position, which creates that a Jailer 2 is actually a certified law enforcement officer, allows for some advancement in there. Typically, in the world of law enforcement, people started in the jail, worked their way through the jail, went into patrol, but some of that has diminished, I'd say, over the years. We're not seeing that as much, so this would give an opportunity for someone to start in the jailer position and kind of move their way through. We talked about this position and overall for the security originally as a jailer. Then we looked at it as maybe a patrol officer and then really settled on this Jailer 2 position. We did put $225,000 into the budget for this year because we knew that the county board was going to be security. So we do have funds available for this, anticipating the county board was going to do something like this. So the funds are available, and really Chief Deputy Dutton's going to come up and kind of just talk about the structure, and I answer any questions you can about the operation part of that if he'd come up, and then I'll be available for any questions after that too.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, Chief Deputy Dutton from the Sheriff's Office. Again, I want to reiterate what Randy said. This Jailer 2 position is a law enforcement position. There's a law enforcement standard board certification that every patrol officer goes through. They hold all the certifications minus the radar and stuff like that because they don't have squads in the jail where they run radar and field sobriety and stuff like that. But for the most part, they're a law enforcement officer. Randy touched on all the highlights of it. The structure is going to be, right now, Deputy Mark Hollister is from patrol, but the court services is supervised under the Lieutenant of Investigations. And so if you guys approve it, the Jailer 2 that's coming from the jail is going to be supervised under the same structure, under the Lieutenant from Investigations. So we have continuity of what we got going on in our workflow. So they'll come there. Right now, when Deputy Hollister takes a vacation day or calls in sick, we don't have somebody who replaces that position full time. We go over there when we have our briefings twice a week in the investigator briefings. Deputy Hollister's there. He gives us a heads up of the date and time of the known people that have caused problems in the past, high profile cases. We make sure that we have somebody there in his absence, or when he's there, we give him backup. When he's gone, it's us just going over there. So with this second position, the jailer 2 position, we'll have somebody there full time. So that'll be a bonus there. This is actually the quickest way we can get some extra security in the courthouse. All the other options require building something or fortifying the structure that we have, which is long-term. We can get somebody relatively quickly into this position and actively pulling security in the courthouse pretty quickly if this is fast. Any questions for me?
So this is in addition to what you have now, kind of a backup for vacation, sick, things like that.
Yes.
Two, it's not a position in the jail, but actually in the courthouse.
Correct.
And are there any technical innovations that we have, cameras? I know when I worked for the government, I had all sorts of instrumentation that I could see literally in people's houses and stuff.
If you ever have time, take a peek into Deputy Hollister's office. He has a full system there of access to every camera in the court, actually in the county, where he can monitor.
Enhanced on boots on the ground thing. Yeah. You're happy with your technology. You're just putting more manpower.
Technology definitely needs to be improved, but improved in areas of like facial recognition. This incident that Randy was talking about with the courthouse security incident we had last year, I worked with facial recognition at the Fest. The Fest just installed it last year. And I put a person's name in their picture, and I put my phone in my pocket, and as I was walking down the steps out of the trailer, my phone buzzed, and I looked at it, and it picked them up. That's how quick it is. So we need that technology, but that's technology in the future. We're looking, like you said, boots on the ground.
Yeah, that technology really works.
Yeah.
It was working in 16 overseas.
Yeah, it's crazy what's out there. And we're looking at beefing this stuff up, but that all takes time and money.
Thank you.
And with the chair's discretion, does the sheriff have anything he'd like to say on this?
I guess the only thing I would say is that I support this.
Would you be able to come up?
Oh, yeah.
Could you please come up?
You're gonna hear a voice.
What I would like to add is that I think this is, like Chief Deputy Dutton reiterated, this is something that we could implement immediately. I think that it would help calm the people that come to the courthouse that do business here. I think it would help calm the employees here. It would be more of a visual presence. You know, Deputy Hollister is really assigned to the second floor. Everybody comes in the building and out of the building on the first floor. So if we had a second position on the first floor, I think it would increase that foot traffic, that foot patrol. We'd be able to identify some possible threats before, they got further into the courthouse. So I think that this is a step in the right direction and a step that we can take, fairly quick action on and, minimal impact. To ask about the camera system, technology is great, but technology is expensive. The boots on the ground is almost a cheaper solution for us to start towards implementing that long-term plan.
Thank you. The Supervisor Gehrig.
Hold my questions for after Randy's done with his presentation. I'm done.
He's done.
Okay, so my comment is, as a member of the executive committee, this was discussed in detail. For those of you who don't know, I have a law enforcement background. Now, we talked about the second person being able to be there when the first person's on vacation. But when you look at sick leave, you look at vacation, this is a minimal thing. I would just like to throw out that I think this should be a 1.5 person, so that we have that fill-in person when it's needed. Maybe one's on vacation, one's on sick leave, and now we have no one. It's just a thought.
I I can get through that quickly. Just to touch on your question, one of the things I've spoke with some of the reserve staff that we have, some of the reserve staff we have would be willing to learn the job details and supplement that. So when we do have a vacation, we'd still possibly have the ability to have 2 people here. So the Reserve Corps could possibly, in the right setting, fill that gap and be that half a position. But with reserves, we have longevity or availability. I know your experience in law enforcement with part-time people, either they're eager to be there and then they get a full-time job someplace else, or they're retired or have another full-time job and they're not as available. So that's a balance that we need to work on, but it's an avenue that we're pursuing, so.
Can I continue?
Yeah.
And you're speaking about a possibility.
Yeah.
That was your words. I'm looking at a for sure thing.
Yeah, I've put it out. I guess why I say possibility would depend on the availability of the current reserves that we have, which is only 3. And if we could retain or attract more reserves, if we could get more candidates, then it would be a for sure thing. If I had 10 people to pick from, the likelihood of me being able to get one of the 10 to fill in that gap would be a positive. It would be a for sure thing. Unless you're talking about taking a full-time person and splitting duties.
Well, no, not necessarily that, but, there are a lot of people who have a law enforcement career, maybe retired at 52, 55.
Yep.
Would be ideal for this and would want a part-time job. I'm maybe looking at through different eyes than the average person, but this is gonna only get to be a bigger deal.
Yep.
Courthouse security is not going to reduce in necessity, it's only going to get to be a bigger deal. And it was just a suggestion, while it's still under the conversational aspect, food for thought.
If you would like to make that recommendation, I will continue to pursue an open recruitment with HR for a reserve deputy to fulfill that specific position. I think part of the struggle that I have with recruitment is sometimes, we have people that would apply to come work in the courthouse, but they don't want to come work the night shift on Thursday night at Rockfest. So.
Well, and I'm also not looking at the logistics of what it takes to do this and the money and that kind of stuff. Again, it's just food for thought.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, and the expertise is well taken. It will depend also on what the county board decides. If you guys decide to go to single point entry, we need 3 for sure, and we'd go down that path. But whatever you decide, we'll come back with a recommendation, including staffing.
Supervisor Guzman?
Thank you. Couple of questions in regard to, are there certain measures or data points that you have in regard to number of incidents or threats or things like that, that we can take a look at from either have been happening since the incident that has been referenced and or moving forward to whatever forward looks like? I'm just looking at it from a numbers and a data perspective.
Unfortunately, security is not something I can give you a hard, fast number on, because it's more important to factor in all the things we've deterred versus the things that we've caught. But I can tell you that it's not uncommon. The one day that we talked about this incident where we went to a single point entry and screened everybody, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was at least 1 gun we recovered and a handful of knives. We had an individual not too long ago that violated a restraining order and showed up with a 6-inch Bowie knife. Just today, the jail captain and the jail lieutenant and myself walked 2 individuals over to court that last time we're at court were extremely volatile. Today, they were happy. So I think it really kind of is a very moving target. And it can go bad like that real fast. Unfortunately, our building here, people come here and get their children taken away. They lose their homes, they get divorced. Not everybody's here to get married and be adopted. So that's the unfortunate reality, as the administrator kind of alluded to, that it can go, seemingly okay, and then all of a sudden it's one decision and it's a bad situation. So did I answer your question a little bit? Okay.
And And I don't know the answer to this, maybe the chief does. We did at one point track pull cords and responses. Are we still doing that?
Mark has the numbers of Atomic, but we can run the queries from Spielman.
Okay,
And
we can provide that.
if you want them.
Some of those would be accidental though, too.
Yeah, there are, yeah, for sure. Does happen. But they come just in force regardless, because you never know.
When we show up, I tell them that at least they know that they work and it gives us exercise, so.
There you go.
Supervisor Hennick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we voting on this right now, or are we just discussing this?
We're voting for the position, the jailer 2 position. That would be for security tonight.
And does it close out the half position that was suggested by another?
No, absolutely not. No, I think that would come through the process that I talked about earlier. Depending on what your final decision is, if you make a final decision next month, we would bring back what we recommend as far as closing doors and all that, and staffing would do that.
In your opinion, if your wife was hurt while they were visiting you and she happened to go through the entrance near the courtroom because of lack of staff, how would you feel about this vote now?
I guess I'm not sure what you're saying. Are you saying if we don't vote for this, how would I feel? I mean, if you don't approve it, how would I feel?
How would you feel if your wife was hurt? She came and visited you, she happened to go by the court where the people come in for the court, and she was injured. How would you feel not having an extra half, or have not had an extra half salaried person?
I'd be upset if somebody hurts my wife, they're in trouble, first of all. Second of all, I don't think it matters how many people you have in law enforcement or the ability to have security if things happen. I mean, you get hurt walking down the street and somebody can take your purse or rob you of your wallet or whatever's going on. So I wouldn't be upset because we didn't approve a half position. That wouldn't affect.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor Shoebridge.
Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate a little bit is that hard cases make bad law. So just kind of that thinking of what's the worst case scenario where your family, bad things happen. So let's, as we think through it, just kind of think through what is, reasonable precautions, what we can afford going forward through it. And so if you think about trying to get emotional with it, it's just going to make really bad decisions in the long term, just keeping it logical.
Seeing no more speakers in the queue, call the vote then. Green to approve, red to disapprove. And release vote.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution is approved. Item 9, County Board Chair appointments. There are none. Item 10, County Administrator appointments. Item number 1, County Administrator appointment for the ADRC Board. Look for a motion to approve.
Later, so moves. Romeyer seconds.
Okay, and a motion is second to approve. Any discussion? Supervisor Bomar.
Nope.
Nope.
Just trying to vote.
We're
Jumping the gun.
ready to
Jumping
go.
the gun. I leaned too far forward. You were looking for that other bull.
You just bought it.
When we get it back up again, I guess we'll call the vote then. Release.
20 yes, 0 no.
So the appointment to the ADRC Board is approved. Item 2 is the Housing Authority Commission appointment. Looking for a motion to approve.
Supervisor Bergeron seconds.
Supervisor Gehring makes a motion. Supervisor Bergeron, second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call the vote then.
Oh, just wait.
See, it's not just me.
Okay, release the vote.
20 yes, 0 no.
Okay, that appointment is approved. Item 11, agenda items for future consideration. If there's any, you can send them to me. It's time for item 12.
Erickson makes a motion to adjourn.
Eric, move to adjourn.
Supervisor Lotz seconds.
Lot second. Don't forget to finish your day and vote.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, please vote.
20